Good evening. Thank you. So on behalf of ACASA, I welcome you, both members of the organization as well as non-members. My name is Mark D.K. Delancey, and I'm a professor of African and Islamic art history at DePaul University, as well as the outgoing president of ACASA. ACASA is the Arts Council of the African Studies Association. Our organization aims to bring together all those interested in the arts of Africa and the African diaspora, whether they be professors, students, museum professionals, researchers, gallery owners, practicing artists, or simply enthusiasts. We take a broad perspective on the definition of arts, including all of its forms, from performance and dance to architecture, to textiles, painting, sculpture, dress, and beyond, from the most ancient of human aesthetic expressions to the most recent artistic productions of the contemporary moment. All are welcome. One of the most important functions of the organization is to bring together our community from around the world every 3 years for a symposium, where we can hear the latest research and exchange ideas. Our very first triennial symposium was held in Hampton, Virginia in 1968, and we've met, with rare exception, every 3 years since. The venue changes each time, with recent symposia being held at the University of Ghana at Legon in 2017, the Brooklyn Museum in 2014, and UCLA in 2011. The original intention was for DePaul and the AIC to jointly host the 2020 symposium, but there was this little thing called COVID that kind of got in the way. So after a delay to revise plans, we met online a year later in 2021, and now in 2024, we meet here in Chicago in person once again, albeit for the first time with a hybrid experience to include those who, unfortunately, for one reason or another, were not able to make the trip. The theme of the symposium is radical listening, human-centered approaches to African arts, which we believe to be most appropriate given the social turmoil that we've all experienced since our last in-person gathering in Ghana, as well as given the extraordinary change that our field itself is experiencing. We aim for inclusivity with membership from across the Americas, Europe, and Africa, and even some from Asia, as I discovered today. We also try to ground each of our symposia in their local context, finding ways that our attendees can experience something of the host city. And at the same time, we hope to give something back as well. And in that light, it gives me great pleasure to be able to address not just our symposium attendees tonight, but also my fellow art-loving Chicagoans. I wish to thank Costa Petridis and the AIC for partnering with us to co-host our 2024 triennial, and most particularly for hosting our keynote speaker, Adenike Cosgrove, whose work with Imodara so complements the theme of our symposium. Thank you.
Hello and good evening and welcome everybody, and thank you, Mark. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Art Institute, and I'm happy that you made it to Chicago and to the Art Institute and even to this auditorium. I know it was a little bit tricky, but welcome. And Mark, thank you very much for those kind words. And on behalf of the Art Institute, I want to express my thanks to ACASA for the opportunity to organize this evening's lecture and the event as a whole. Speaking on behalf of my colleagues, we're extremely proud, of course, to be part of this organization's symposium this year. And as you know, we have a long tradition of showing and sharing and presenting the arts of Africa. And I hope that during this busy schedule of the conference, you'll find a moment to go and visit our permanent galleries, both the one called Arts of Africa, which is mainly focused on many parts of the African continent except for Egypt, but we also have an ancient Egyptian art collection in another gallery on another floor that I also invite you to visit. And then, of course, there's works of African art that pertain to many different other departments that are spread throughout the museum building that I hope you'll find your way to as well. And as you may have seen, if you arrived a little bit earlier, you were lucky enough to arrive earlier, we're also planning temporary exhibitions in the future, so I hope that this experience, if it is your first time, will encourage you to come back and come and experience and visit some of our upcoming exhibitions, most notably, of course, starting in December of this year, Project a Black Planet on the arts and culture of Pan-Africa. But all of this just as a way to take valuable time from our speaker of this evening. It is really a great pleasure to be able to introduce to our audiences, both Akassa and others, Adenike Cosgrove. I have to admit that I'm especially thrilled to have her here, and I have to say thank you to Kristen Wildmuller-Luna for being the first to suggest Adenike to me, and then she was followed by many other enthusiasts who all will want to take credit for having Adenike here. I'm not going to try and read her bio, but of course she's mainly known for her work with the digital platform Imodara. All of us know it, all of us use it. I find it, like many of us, very useful in so many ways. And one person asked me, but Adenike is not an academic, she's not a curator. No, she's a passionate African art enthusiast with an immense knowledge and an immense dedication to the arts of Africa and a willingness to bridge the world of curators, scholars, and collectors through her platform and through her activities. And it is with that idea of interconnectivity and the universal language of African art in mind that I was thrilled to invite Adenike to come on behalf of Akassa and the museum and give this keynote address. So without further ado, here is Adenike for you. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. I was like, you can keep going. You can keep going, because I'm, Wow. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to Akassa, the DePaul University, the Art Institute of Chicago for welcoming me. You know, my background as a technologist is usually immersed in the world of data. It's about facts, it's about tangible things, things we can hold, things we can touch. And so that might seem like a distant world away from this reality of art and culture. And yet I'm here, and I'm humbled, and I'm thrilled, because on reflection, this is a field of passion. It's a field where the art speaks of love, it speaks of beauty, ugliness, power, servitude, it speaks of humanity. So thanks are due to Amanda Maples. Amanda, thank you so much for inviting me here, Professor Bol Basu for extending the invitation, and of course Costa, thank you for encouraging me into this session on art that transcends mere aesthetics to touch on our shared humanity, identity, connection, and radical listening. But before we dig into all of the art and all of the history and all of the aesthetic beauty of the art that is from the African continent, we're going to start with a story. We're going to start with a story that goes back in time. So cast your mind back to the 50s. This was a post-World War II era. This was a time when Queen Elizabeth II started her new reign. This was a period of ripe innovation and technological advancement. That technology came in the form of the first passenger jet. You know, we were in planes. We were in the sky. In the 50s. This was a time when televisions were ubiquitous across a number of American households. We were watching things on these screens in our homes, huddled around them, and entertaining ourselves in our homes. It was also a time when we witnessed a period of political awakening, as nations like Libya, Guinea, Ghana, Sudan stepped into sovereignty, casting off those colonial chains. And amidst this global upheavals, amidst this time of change, we find a beacon of artistic brilliance. His name is Fama Kinwa. He's from Nigeria. He's a Yoruba sculptor who spent most of his adult life in Owo. That's a town that is in Ondo State in Nigeria. He's widely regarded as one of the most influential Yoruba artists of the 20th century. He's known as a master of composition. And here he is in the 50s holding an udamalore. That's a sword that he carved, and it's ultimately a sword that is referred to as the sword of the well-born. It's ultimately owned by a respected family, and it's usually carried by kings during annual festivals and ceremonies in the community. Now, Famakinwa was born in 1881, and his artistic journey began in his father's workshop. And that workshop was in the Owo royal courts, so in the king's courts in Owo. His father carved these doors for the palace of the Ojomo of Ijebu Owo. So that's ultimately the king of that community. Displaying remarkable talent from a young age, Famakinwa began formal training at the age of just 7 under his dad's workshop. And by the age of 13, he'd already surpassed his dad's artistic skills. And here's an example of one of the figures or objects that he carved. It's one of his major works, and it's an olumeye, an offering bowl. And again, that literally translates to one who brings honor and respect. It's ultimately a masterpiece of form and function. It represents respect, reverence, and it's traditionally used in royal courts and in households to offer guests and deities as well offerings of kola nuts. It's carved meticulously from a single piece of wood, and this exquisite sculpture portrays a kneeling nude female figure, and that's a rarity in Yoruba carvings because typically those figures are carved standing. Her face is adorned with 3 vertical marks on her cheeks, which signify her identity, and her elongated neck and full pointed breasts exude elegance. She has a protective amulet on her chest, and that symbolizes spiritual safeguarding. Now, she gracefully holds the sides of the bowl with both hands. The bowl itself is masterfully carved in the form of a cock with a detachable lid. Now, this work of art stands as a testament to the skill and richness of Famakinwa's work. Now, his life was as richly textured as his work. He had a number of relationships, many marriages, multiple wives, which profoundly influenced his work. He left a mark on the art world with his innovative styles, and profound influence was felt by subsequent generations of artists. And here's a similar olumeye, and it was shown right here at this museum just last year during the Language of Beauty in African Art exhibition. Famakinwa died in 1973. Now, what if I told you that much of the story that I just shared was fake? It was false. It was made up. That actually, what I used was Picasso's biography of Wikipedia. Like, you could search it, and the beginning intro was ultimately Picasso's biography. And that's because we know Famakinwa's name. We know some of his work, but his real biography, his methods, his history remain unknown. The stark reality is that much of Famakinwa's true story might be shrouded in mystery. His techniques, his inspiration, his true impact is somewhat lost to time. It's obscured by the very admiration that elevates his work. But we did some sleuthing, and here's the power of the internet and social media. And I'm sorry, Professor Paul, there he is, Robin Poyner, I'm gonna embarrass you, because we sent an unsolicited Facebook message to Professor Robin Poyner of the University of Florida. He spent some time in Owo in the 70s, and now he replied to my message almost immediately. Again, connection. He shared that Famakinwa was long gone before he arrived in Owo in 1973. But he went on to share that according to Justice Akeredolu, who was also an Owo sculptor, it's believed that one of the famous ancestral ram's heads that is currently in the National Museum of Nigeria was carved by Famakinwa. It currently sits in the museum in Lagos. Another carver that was interviewed by Professor Poyner, Onisile Ogunmola, he told him that he'd lived in the house of Famakinwa. So there's a little bit of that biography that we're starting to uncover. Now, this is what remains of Famakinwa's house. This was shared by Tunde Onibode. He's a passionate advocate of Owo history. And again, I reached out to him on Facebook and he immediately replied. He said, I'm going to go to the area and I'm going to do some digging and I'm going to uncover his story. And he shared that the house is close to the palace of the king of Ijebu-Owo. Again, that kind of speaks to how important Famakinwa was, if his home was close to the palace of the king. He went on to share that many do not seem to know much about Famakinwa anymore. Investigations are ongoing with the elders. So his family background, much like the man, fades into the fabric of history, remembered only through his family's artworks. It is through the lens of Justine Caldwell, a pioneering scholar at Berkeley, the Art Institute of Chicago, and Northwestern University, that we get a small view into the world that Famakinwa inhabited. Again, in the 1950s, Justine Caldwell, a PhD student at the time, ventured into Nigeria, camera in hand. She wanted to capture the lives of woodcarvers, like Famakinwa, preserving these fleeting moments of a vibrant era that was fading. His name is recorded, yet his story and his artworks are gone. What remains is a name and a legacy tinged with anonymity. The pieces he created, where are they now? His influence and techniques, how have they shaped the artists that followed? These photographs provide a tangible connection to the past, securing Famakinwa's place in visual archives. Yet, despite these efforts, many African artists remain anonymous, their stories untold. For every recognized artist, like Famakinwa, there are countless unnamed contributors, often referred to merely by their ethnic group, or not mentioned at all. These artists, integral to their communities, saw their identities overshadowed, from the ethnographers who neglected to record the creators' names, fascinated by the artifacts more than the artists, to the destructive policies of colonial and missionary groups, viewing these objects merely as pieces of conversion or tokens of a primitive past. These factors contributed to a narrative that stripped away the personal from the artistic. The mass destructions led by figures like Joseph Babalola further severed the ties between artists and their works, urging the obliteration of cultural symbols that held community significance. Each of these periods contributed to the systemic stripping away of identity and the stripping away of value from African art and its creators. So in our quest to identify the villains in this story, we confront not just individuals, but entire systems of historical injustices, colonial looting, the destruction of artwork, the profound threat of cultural amnesia. These forces have conspired to marginalize African art, relegating it to the fringes of the global art narrative. So as we acknowledge the power of these visual archives, we must also recognize our role in continuing to uncover and elevate these forgotten individuals, because there's more to the story. There's a narrative of resilience and revival. The art remains. The art survives, and it's on a journey of its own identity, agency, and connection. In the face of so-called progress, where identities may fade, the art remains resilient. Consider the mask, carved by an unknown artist, and its very existence a statement of defiance and survival. This mask, possibly once connected to ceremonies in the historical Owo Palace, now serves as a relic of a kingdom whose splendor once rivaled that of Benin City. The decisions surrounding these artworks are as affecting as the pieces themselves. There's a profound agency in the choice made by one owner to sell the mask rather than destroy it when it no longer served its spiritual purpose. This decision alone bridges the past with the present, allowing that piece, that mask, to continue its narrative journey in new hands and perhaps even in new lands. Yet, how often do we truly listen to what these artworks are trying to say? Amidst the trials they've endured, these pieces retain a significant power, serving as beacons that connect us to a heritage that risks being forgotten. Each piece is a vessel of communication, echoing the voices of those creators and the stories of their origins. But what of the stories that remain untold? The vast majority of these works that are fumigated, preserved, hidden away in storage, out of sight and often out of mind. The tale of Famakinwa, a master carver, mirrors this predicament. His narrative is fragmented, his works potentially gathering dust in storerooms or lying unrecognized in private collections. We must ask ourselves, how much information is too much and how much is not enough? We see museum labels that attempt to encapsulate centuries of heritage in a few lines. As we consider the legacy of classical African art, which seamlessly blends the religious with the secular, the spiritual with the material, let us also ponder the life cycle of these works. It is said that only when a mask dies is a new one created. This cyclical rebirth of art forms a powerful reminder of the enduring nature of these treasures. Now, it was, I hate this picture of myself, but I was trying to find one with me with an artwork, but it was in that treasure that I found myself, identity. My journey through diverse cultures. I was born in Tokyo, I was raised in Hong Kong and Lagos. I now currently reside in London. I spent some time in Venezuela and in Zimbabwe. But what I found was there was this profound exploration of my Nigerian roots and that universal language of art. Despite this global exposure, my roots continually draw me back to explore the depths of Yoruba culture and history. So about a decade ago, I went on a trip to Nigeria. I stumbled upon an art village. It was kind of like a tourist trap. You know what it's like with the mud huts and we're back in time. But it was more like a tourist trap. And, without much knowledge of African art then, I purchased what I believed to be genuine antiques. They were Benin bronzes, they were leopards, but I paid $600 for them. I thought they were authentic. I'm like, this is a lot of money for tourist art. This must be legitimate. Now, the dealer, he assured me of their authenticity. Maybe it was the locks, I don't know. But he was like, they are special. And you look like the kind of person who appreciates art. This is just for you. I don't show everybody this. Yeah, I fell for it. My excitement, it was palpable. So I put the bronzes in my suitcase. I smuggled them out of Nigeria, took them back to London. I went to the British Museum in the Africa section for the very first time, went down to the basement, and lo, behold, false, fake, rubbish. But this eye-opening experience sparked a deep request for authenticity, and it led to the creation of Imadara. It was a platform that's aimed at navigating that complex nuance that is African art for collectors and enthusiasts alike. That museum visit sparked a profound realization of our collective disconnection from our heritage and the role that art plays in understanding and shaping identity. Navigating through the National Museum of Lagos, the British Museum, the galleries of Paris, and the vibrant London art fair scene, I was plagued with questions. How was I oblivious to the richness of African creativity? Why was this not part of my education? Why is the world largely unaware of Africa's artistic legacy? It made me question whose life script I was following. And so Imadara was founded with a vision to illuminate the histories behind African kingdoms and their art, presented through a lens that combines scholarly research with accessible, engaging storytelling. Our aim has been to cater not only to established collectors, but also to attract a new audience to this vibrant field. By integrating digital technology with expertise and knowledge, we provided quality, consistent information that was easily accessible online. And this approach helps demystify African art, making it approachable for those new to the field and deepening engagement for established collectors. Our recent surveys reveal a shift in the demographic of African art collectors. We're seeing a shift to young, female, and African enthusiasts in a traditionally male-dominated field. So as we continue to build Imadara, our commitment is to foster a global community that appreciates the profound depth and breadth of African art, ensuring that its stories and legacies are not only preserved, but celebrated. Now, African art transcends mere aesthetic appreciation. It embodies a profound expression of human emotions, fears, feelings, and it resonates universally. Our interactions with collectors and visits to numerous galleries and conversations with dealers and scholars have reinforced that truly understanding African art goes beyond simple observation. It involves an immersive engagement with the artworks themselves, embracing their touch, smell, weight, the patina. It also involves the people and the stories that surround the art. So at Imidara, we aim to bridge the gaps between enthusiast, collector, dealer, scholar, groups that often remain isolated, disconnected from each other. So for instance, our platform facilitated a collector connection that introduced me to the exceptional collection at the Ripburg Museum that then resulted in a collaborative publication with a renowned scholar, underscoring the power of community and shared knowledge. Challenging the narrative of a dying African art market, we initiated interviews with collectors at various stages of their collecting journey, uncovering a vibrant ecosystem. These discussions reveal that younger collectors may start with smaller investments, and there is a critical role for the art community in nurturing these new collectors and exposing them to the rich diversity of African art available at all price points. Additionally, our recent global survey of almost 400 collectors aimed to gauge the impact of economic trends on purchasing decisions and the role of digital platforms in enhancing art accessibility. The survey also explored how discussions of restitution are shaping the future of collecting. Now, in a personal touch, we asked respondents to name a piece from the Art Institute of Chicago that they would choose to own, revealing the deep personal, if magic could happen, what one piece from the museum's collection would you own? But it really revealed a deep personal connection that many feel towards African art, and it highlighted the diversity in the creation of art on the continent. Now, among the top prized artworks from the AIC collection is the Yoruba veranda post carved by Olowe. Olowe is a name that is deeply revered in Yoruba artistry. Olowe's acclaim is captured in a traditional oriki. Oriki is a praise song. It's sung by one of his wives. Again, there's that theme of multiple wives. I don't know how they handle it. It was sung by one of his wives, which not only celebrates his craftsmanship, but character, and also chronicles the geographical spread of his masterpieces. This oriki highlights Olowe's exceptional skill in transforming the hard Iroko wood into intricate sculptures that are as malleable as the calabash. It earned him widespread fame and admiration, and a little bit of the oriki goes like this. His wife shares, Olowe, my excellent husband, outstanding leader in war, emissary of the king, you carve Iroko with unparalleled skill. One who achieves fame with the proceeds of his carving, your work standing proud in the palaces of Ogoga, Owo, Ikare, Igede, and beyond. A master carver whose hands brought forth a lion that is now in England. With his hands he made it. I shall always adore you, Olowe. This oriki is more than praise. It underscores Olowe's significant impact and his lasting legacy of his works. Far from the anonymous figures often associated with African art, Olowe's name is well recognized, with his commissioned pieces marking significant cultural sites across Yoruba land. His dynamic, asymmetric, and intricately detailed style marked a significant evolution in the Yoruba sculptural tradition. Olowe was often entrusted to furnish palaces, and that's a testament to the high esteem in which he was held. Now, second is the fang head. Everybody wants a fang head, but it's revered as a piece of classical art among collectors due to its profound cultural and historical significance. This piece is not just an artwork. It's a guardian of heritage, much like the museum. Its design features strategic copper alloy eye inserts, enhancing its mystical presence and deterring intruders with reflections and dim light. It effectively bridges the tangible with the spiritual world. The history of this particular Fanghead's acquisition adds layers to its mystique and desirability. Historically part of the esteemed Pierre Verité collection, this Fanghead was acquired during a period, the 1930s, when Paris was a hub for African art collectors. Its journey from a sacred item to a highly coveted auction piece illustrates the complex narrative of African art in the global marketplace. At the 2006 Art Primitifs auction, it sold for 1.6 million euros, well over its 500 to 600,000 estimate. This showcases how provenance, rarity, and historical significance captivate the art market. The Fanghead's history with the legendary Verité collection to the record-breaking auction underscores the intricate interplay of art, history, and market dynamics. The market influences museums, museums influence the market. More than its aesthetic and historical functions, it is treasured for the stories it embodies and the many hands it has passed through, serving as a bridge between past and present, multiple cultures, and the spiritual and secular realms. Now, the third most admired work in the collection, according to collectors, is the Nkisi Nkondi, revered for its spiritual and communal protective powers among Central African nations, especially among the Congo. These are not mere sculptures, but vessels of potent spiritual force activated by a sacred mixture known as Bilongo and inhabited by a spirit. Employed by diviners, the Nkisi serves various community needs, from healing diseases and warding off witchcraft to ensuring success in hunts. Its power is dual-natured. It protects, but it can also cause harm if directed to do so, reflecting the complex ethical dimensions of its use. This duality underscores the Nkisi's active role in societal dynamics, capable of both benevolence and malevolence. It's a figure of agency, deeply respected, feared, and believed to embody the intentions of those who wield it. As described by one collector, it radiates exactly what it's supposed to. Now, completing the top 4 esteemed artworks is the Baga Nimba headdress, an icon of African art celebrated for its unique design. It was first acquired when the AIC Department of African Art was founded in 1957. Is that right, Costa? Yeah? Okay, cool. This headdress marked a pivotal moment in museum collections. It symbolizes its profound influence on the perception of African art, in the West particularly. Renowned for its distinctive form, the Nimba inspired avant-garde artists in the early 20th century, leading to its rediscovery and heightened fame. This piece is not merely a headdress, but a representation of historical canons and cultural stereotypes that have shaped the understanding of African art. Recognized for its quality and value, the Nimba is sought after by not only new, but also seasoned collectors. It represents a nurturing mother figure embodying generosity, fertility, the essence of life, making it revolutionary in its design. The Nimba transcends its functional role and extends beyond art, actually. It's featured on national postage stamps, it's on banknotes, it's even a sports trophy. It's cemented its status as a cultural icon of Guinea.
Is surely its repetition, but the key to such repetition was that new elements were added each go-round. Every round goes higher and higher. Something fresh popped off the page or jumped from a rhythm that had been recycled through the imagination of a writer or a musician. Each new installation bore the imprint of our unquenchable thirst to say something of our own, in our own way, in our own voice, as best we could. The trends of the times be damned. Thank God we've still got musicians and thinkers whose obsession with excellence and whose hunger for greatness remind us that we should all be unsatisfied with mimicking the popular rather than mining the fertile veins of creativity that God placed deep inside each of us.
Repetition. In the context of African cultural expression, repetition is not merely about reiteration, but evolution. In the Nimba, we see a perfect example of that nuance, that growth, the adaptation in repetition, where repetition ascends recognition, where repetition is progress, where each go-round shows appreciation and understanding that elevates the art to new heights. With each rendition, we witness not just repetition, but an elevation, a progressive refinement that brings new layers of understanding. This iterative process is a profound demonstration of how traditional forms can adapt and thrive. This concept of progressive repetition reminds us that true creativity often springs from revisiting and reimagining the familiar. Each cycle brings something fresh, something uniquely inspired by the past, yet distinctly forward-looking. As Michael Eric Dyson in that song insightfully observed, the path to greatness for the great artists of our era is paved with authentic expression, not mere imitation. They inspire us to uncover the extraordinary within the ordinary, challenging us to dig deeper and explore the vast potential of our creativity. Connection. This commitment to originality in connection fuels the ongoing evolution of African art, which continues to ascend with each iteration, extending its reach into future possibilities. This progression invites us to consider how African art will evolve and respond to the shifting currents of time and thought. The transformation of African art from utilitarian objects to symbols of contemplation signifies a pivotal shift in perception and function. Once emblems of power and community identity, these pieces now serve as conduits of reflection and discourse. Contemporary artists draw from a rich heritage of African traditions to engage with modern issues and connect with historical narratives, thereby fostering a dialogue that integrates classical elements with contemporary realities. These dynamics prompt us to reflect on the optimal way to display African art in museums and galleries. We're called to think about whether organizing exhibitions chronologically, geographically, or thematically would best narrate their stories and illustrate their interconnected themes. Now, museums often set the tone of what good looks like, as demonstrated by the remarkable auction of a Nimba headdress at Christie's just this year. Recall the Nimba that we saw earlier from the Art Institute's collection. It sparked a renewed interest in classic African art during the March sale of the Barbie Müller collection, where this Nimba fetched 1.5 million euros, far exceeding its initial estimate of 500 to 700,000. Originating from the prestigious Barbie Müller collection, known for its meticulous creation and curation by Josef Müller since the 1930s, this piece has added layers of prestige and rarity to its profile. Prestige because the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York celebrated the collection's significance with a dedicated exhibition in 2009, and the headdress allure is enhanced by its pristine condition, its dry patina, and its proof of age in old coins. Then, of course, there's a notable example, again from the Art Institute of Chicago, of that Fang head that we saw earlier. And here's another Fang head that was sold again this year at that same auction, and it sold for a remarkable 14.8 million euros. That's the highest price ever fetched by a classical African artwork at auction. 14.8 million euros. It was collected before 1939, and this piece featured that black, sticky patina that's highly sought after by collectors. These record-breaking sales not only underscore the artwork's financial value, but also emphasize their cultural and historical importance, reaffirming their status as essential elements of human heritage beyond mere antiques. And then here's another example. Remember the Nkisi that we saw earlier? Here's one that sold at that very same auction, setting another record. This sold for an astonishing 9 million euros. Now, this significant sale highlights how museums and market dynamics mutually shape perceptions and the valuations of African art, with collectors often influenced by the historical prestige attached to classical pieces. This particular Nkisi was collected by Swiss missionaries in 1914, and it underscores the contentious history of colonial extraction in the then Belgium Congo. Many artifacts were appropriated under potentially dubious circumstances. Is the history, the provenance of this piece, its beauty in the eyes of collectors? While 80% of surveyed collectors believe that the quality of artwork, its aesthetic, is more important than its historical lineage, a significant majority, 82%, believe that provenance, along with verified information and certificates, will become increasingly critical. Today's collectors are navigating this legacy. They're wrestling with ethical questions about the origins of their collections and the broader implications of perpetuating historical injustices. The high profile of such sales foster a deeper examination within the art community, prompting a critical look of the ethics of collecting and displaying African art. This introspection is critical, as it addresses the long-standing perceptions and challenges associated with this field, encouraging a more conscientious approach to the stewardship and presentation of African art. So who gets to define what good looks like? The notion of good often starts with authentic, a term loaded with complexity. Historically, authenticity implied that an artwork was created and used within its native culture without external influences. In contemporary settings, authenticity might simply align with a dealer's assurance about the artwork's origins. Many collectors value pieces that are old. They seek objects with that mystique of time, often considered more authentic if it was created well before the 1960s. Yet this raises questions. Is an artwork less African if it was academically influenced? If it incorporates foreign elements? Is classic African art only that which excludes external influences, or can it be a blend of purely African creativity with global inspirations? As one collector noted in an interview, with request of anonymity, he said, "I search for what I call art of the forest, concave, cubistic styles, where each piece is a unique invention within traditional forms, pure." Anthropologist Shelley Errington and art historian Sidney Casphere have noted that Western collectors and museums often seek pieces that appear untouched by other cultures, preferring artifacts that represent a pure lineage. However, this perspective can neglect connections, kingdoms that traded with the West centuries ago. It neglects the dynamic and evolution that takes place in art, which continuously adapts to contemporary influences. In this light, art emerges as a bridge, a hero connecting the old with the new, the local with the global. African art's authenticity lies not solely in its age or isolation, but in its ongoing dialogue between historical depth and contemporary relevance. It's about recognizing that African art is alive. It's evolving, it's continuously engaging with new generations. It's about agency. As we assess the complexities of provenance and restitution, it becomes essential to convey these narratives in ways that resonate and educate. It's about more than just returning artifacts. It's about respecting and understanding their rich histories and the communities that cherish them. We need to allow the artworks to speak, to tell their stories, to continue to be part of cultural expressions that extend beyond their geographical origins. By featuring African art in museums, we not only showcase these pieces, but also reflect on contemporary societal values. As an artist, Zina Sarawiwo shares in Worrying the Mask, what if the art meant to be there?
Now, whilst I do believe that some looted objects like Benin bronzes and Ethiopian crowns absolutely should be returned, I'm actually far more concerned with the storytelling they engage in when they are back in Nigeria or Ethiopia. I care about what the objects will say when they are subsequently loaned from Nigeria and Ethiopia to Australia, Brazil, Rwanda, the UK, and France. It is storytelling and not geography that is a long-term matter of consequence. The same problems of storytelling that exist in Western institutions can absolutely be replicated in African ones. Contemporary traditional art making, like Promise's work, therefore throw up an interesting philosophical challenge. It's an opportunity to meditate on the place of this kind of art making in the world today.
So let's celebrate museums as repositories of history, art, and human achievement. These are temples and sacred spaces where a passion for African art is both discovered and deepened. Yet our work is far from done. Museums, our cultural sanctuaries etched in stone and beauty, are currently navigating profound shifts. They respond to growing demands for the restitution of looted objects and seek deeper engagement with the artworks they display. This necessitates an ongoing reevaluation of how art is curated, interpreted, and presented, ensuring that labels such as looted or stolen do not unfairly marginalize classic works or overshadow their intrinsic value. Without the active presence of African art in museums, we risk losing vital connections to roots, floating in a perpetual present. Properly curated, each piece can act as a powerful conduit between past and future, narrating its story with integrity and depth. So our task extends to unveiling full narratives, creative storytelling methods, and confronting uncomfortable truths. And as we reflect on Imodara's journey, feel free, it's a QR code, pull your phones out, scan it, it's cool. But as we reflect on Imodara's journey, we recognize the need for our own transformation. We initially catered to an audience that we found were already collecting, they already knew about African art, they were deep in this field. And so we embraced digital transformation to meet our audience in the digital realm and to engage with a new audience. An audience that maybe isn't aware of African art right now. Our app features detailed descriptions of artworks, a comprehensive museum database, and a global events tracker, all designed to enrich experience and deepen understanding of African art. So please scan it, try it, it's in beta. If it doesn't work, let me know, give feedback. So despite my deep connections with African art, as a Yoruba woman, I feel somewhat disconnected from the direct connection with the masquerade, but I remain in awe of the intrinsic power that these pieces hold. African art offers profound insights into both myself and our collective humanity. They challenge us to see beyond their traditional roles. These objects do more than recount history. They are vessels of imagination and emotion, vibrant and alive across various contexts. They invite us to dream and to envision futures not confined by their past, sparking dialogues not just about their origins, but about the endless possibilities they symbolize for future generations. They encourage us to embrace radical listening, an approach that deepens our engagement with the art and attunes us to the whispers of ancestors. So I invite you to see yourself within the art, to truly listen to what it's communicating. Imagine a future where African art is not just preserved, but celebrated. And so, we began our journey by referencing Picasso's biography. And now we conclude with one of his most provocative statements: good artists copy, great artists steal. And for those that understand Pidgin English, you know what I'm trying to say, with thief, ole. This statement illuminates the continuous interplay between tradition and innovation. Each inspired theft, whether a form, style, or concept, does not merely replicate, but transforms and sometimes elevates. It infuses traditional art with new life and contemporary relevance. This dynamic process ensures that African art is not static, but it is a living, evolving thing that stretches over time. It encourages each new generation of artists to engage deeply, and in doing so, to innovate and to push the boundaries of expression. And thus, tradition is not a constraint, but a springboard that encourages creativity. So let us engage with African art, not merely as passive observers, but as active participants in a dialogue that transcends time and geography, a dialogue that spans centuries. As we conclude, let us remember that whether as a curator, scholar, visitor, enthusiast, collector, engaging with African art goes beyond mere appreciation and observation. It's about allowing those works to speak, to share their stories, and to resonate with us on both a personal and collective level. Thank you. I have 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
Thank you all. So we ran a little bit over time because of the issues of getting in, so we've been told that we have a little bit more time. The idea was to have a sit-down dialogue between the two of us first and then open it for questions. I think we'll have to reduce the format. And it will be difficult when it comes to questions because you've covered so much ground, and our audience is very diverse, as you may have imagined, not only because our own ACASA representation is diverse, but also because we have regular museum members who are part of the audience. So we'll have to balance those two voices if they manifest themselves. But maybe we can have a seat.
Sure.
I can ask you one question just to get it started, and then maybe 2 or 3 more questions from the audience. Now it should work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Good. So, first of all, by the way, I apparently forgot to mention, my name is Costa Petridis. I'm the Rita Knox Chair and Curator of the Arts of Africa here at the Art Institute, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I have the honor to be on stage with you and ask you a few questions. So let's start with the one simple question that I noticed in your presentation. You focused, among other things, on the Art Institute collection, for which our thanks, but also on the so-called historical, classical, tradition-based arts. You had some references to more than that, but tell us a little bit about your engagement, both perhaps personally and in terms of Imodara, with the other art traditions of the continent, and specifically the modern, or rather the contemporary.
Yeah, and that's a question I've been grappling with, of the entire African continent over all time, including to today. There's only so much a human can do, and for me personally, I believe you do your best work where you're passionate And there are a lot of people that are covering modern, there are a lot of people that are especially covering contemporary African art. There are a lot of publications, there are a lot of websites. I feel like, you have a lot of scholars as well that are studying contemporary African art. But for me personally, again, going into the British Museum for the first time and going into that basement for the first time and looking at all of this historical work, the fact that I had no idea about this, the fact that I didn't see it when I was in Nigeria, the fact that we weren't taught about it, and there was all of this richness in the creation in the past, it blew my mind. It blew my mind, and so I wanted to dig in and learn as much as I could and get more people excited about that, because again, I feel like there's a lot of people covering modern and contemporary, and they're doing a great job and probably doing a much better job than I ever could, so we focused.
That makes sense. But then out of curiosity, if that's not too personal,
Sure.
Over the years that you've been involved, to say the least, you create it, you run it, you are the main voice behind Imodara, but you've interviewed and spoken with so many people and engaged with so many people from various corners and parts of the world and society. What is it that has marked you most, perhaps? What is the most surprising or profound impact that this project has had on you, and in what way did that change you, or change your, specifically, of course, your interest, your engagement with the arts of Africa or the continent?
Yeah, I think in two ways. I think the first thing that I was really surprised by was how open this community in this field is, how passionate the scholars and curators are in this field, how much they wanted to share information. And, in fact, I got overwhelmed by the amount of information I was given. So how open collectors were to, come on over, have a look at my collection, come on over, spend time in my home. It was just a field where, you could feel the passion of those that are involved, and it just inspired me to continue to want to go on and push harder and share more. So I think that's the first thing that was quite inspirational, was how open everybody is. And I think the second thing was, as we started to publish more, we recognized that we were bringing a new audience into this as well, and I loved that. And personally, my private mission is to get more Africans collecting classical African art. I feel like we need to expand the audience, and we need to get more people recognizing that this is a field that we can get involved in. Especially because as I personally started collecting, my mom wasn't so sure at first. She was like, this is why you don't have kids, because you've got all this juju in your house. but she's finally come around, and she's recognizing that, look, it's wood, it's, you put whatever you want to put into that wood. But no, I think the fact that more diversity in that audience over time has been really inspirational and really exciting.
And you've seen that. You've seen that.
Oh
happen.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Where there are individuals that are like, how do I start? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? And I think this is something that actually the field could do a better job of. It's making it easier for people to self-educate. Providing the resources for others to self-educate. In contemporary, there are a number of resources online, even lessons that you can go to, universities that are open to enthusiasts to learn about contemporary African art, but it's not the same in the historical or the classical. So I think we could make it easier for people to learn and to engage with the work.
Another role for Akasa to take on.
Yeah,
Another
no pressure work.
Yeah. Right. So with that, maybe we can undim the room a little bit, because it's nice to see our audience. And I know there's 2 microphones available, and people will be apparently kind enough to bring them your way. So whoever feels compelled to ask a question or 2, be our guest, right?
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Erica Witt, and I am super excited to be here and super excited to see you in person and finally put a face to the friend on social media that keeps popping up on my suggested friend list. But again, thank you so much. My question is, what would be your advice to African Americans who are wanting that connection to African art but don't really know where to start? Where would you give the advice on where they should start? Or for a practitioner within the museum field like myself who teaches at an HBCU, who's trying to give this history and heritage back to people who were forcibly torn from the continent, what would you say to them? Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for that.
And please be my friend later.
Oh, yeah. Send me a request, girl. I got you. No, I think, again, it goes to what we were talking about before, in that in the classical field, it's a lot easier for people to know where to go to get information, but in this field, it's like, where do I start, right? The first thing I did was just go to museums, visit as many museums as possible, see as many objects as you can, visit collectors, visit galleries, go hound dealers, because this is a field where you have to handle the objects to understand the object. So touch as much as you can. And then read a ton of books. Books. I mean, I was obsessed. Again, go to libraries. It's not that you have to buy the books. There's a lot of digital archives online as well of historical books that speak to different exhibitions and different artworks. And then again, like I said, engage with curators. What I found is reaching out, a lot of people want to share that information. Scholars want to share that information. So it's just visit museums, visit collections, go to imadara.com, talk to curators.
And of course, to professors. There are many teachers.
Professors, scholars,
here,
yes.
In many different institutions, schools, colleges that teach African art and that I'm sure are available to open their classes or share their knowledge and their interests.
Yeah.
We have a
Thank
question
you.
in the center here.
Good evening. Unlike the first individual that spoke, I have a very modest collection. And the issue that I tend to have the most trouble with is the same thing that you had mentioned, which is fakes. And trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to get a source of someone that I could work with that would be able to let me know, no, this is real, this is not. I did have a dealer some time ago that I could trust that would do that, but he has since retired. So I'm looking for any information you can provide.
I mean, I don't want to mention any particular individuals, but again, even like with someone who's starting out, who wants to learn about African art generally, if it's trying to identify fakes within your collection, again, the best thing you want to do is be a sleuth. Get those books. Even if it's just looking at pictures, get access to archives. We're in a collecting field now where there's a lot that's been digitized. There's things like Arcade, and we're going to provide notes after this, right? We'll provide, okay. There's platforms like Arcade that show you the history of all of the auctions that have taken place and all of the objects that have been sold and for what value. And again, you can kind of compare your collection to those. There's the Guy Archive, there's the Yale Archive as well that shows a number of different objects from a number of different collections. Museums are digitizing their collections. Again, look at those online archives and databases of what museums hold, and you can start to compare your objects to some of the things that are in public collections as well. And that kind of starts to give you an indication of what good looks like. Anything to add to that?
Well, there's credited experts and appraisers too, auction
Yes.
houses and others, so that would be another avenue to tap into and explore in a more direct way. That could save you a little bit of
Save you time.
study
Yeah.
and time, if that's your intention at least.
Yeah.
There's one right up here.
When I look at the labels in African art collections at the Art Institute and other museums, I see a lot of language like could be, maybe, perhaps from Angola or Congo, might have been used for this or that. Do you think that more research is actually going to enable you to be clearer and more definite on this, or
Yeah, Costa, is it going to help you?
is the history of African art just too opaque?
I'll deal with it. No, and it's a great question, and I understand where it comes from. And some of our colleagues would tell you museums are too affirmative, are too authoritative. They could do more in highlighting the uncertainties, the questions, the vagueness. Because the truth is, unfortunately, so little of the continent and its arts and its cultures and legacies has actually been thoroughly studied, and one could even debate about what means thoroughly. So from that point of view, there's still so much work to be done, and in many cases it's late, and it's also too late to catch up and try to fill in all the blanks that exist. But I think that's why we have a community of Africanist art historians who meet every 3 years in one or the other place around the world to share knowledge and update each other and continue to do the research. And we diversify in many different ways, but it's important to remember, as you did in your question and as Adenike did in her presentation, that there are these museum collections around here that deserve attention. And attention can mean many different things, but one of them could be renewed interest, more thorough study, going to records that have not been looked into, and inquire with people both on the African continent and elsewhere. So there is a tremendous work to be done, and at some point we may be able to be a little bit more sure and certain and positive than we may seem to be now, but the truth is that there is probably a lot of unknown that will remain, and I think that you know, we obviously have to respect that and acknowledge that, and that is one of the great challenges. How do you tell a captivating, interesting story that is ideally also largely true? So maybe one more question? Yes?
So firstly, of course, congratulations on an absolutely superb presentation. My question sort of speaks more to your background in tech and where you see AI as a tool and what thoughts you might have given to how we can use that as a future, as a tool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have put too much hope in AI because, again, I think we need to remember that in this field, you can't outsource an understanding of the object. You can't outsource an understanding of the cultures that influenced and created these objects. You can't outsource that to technology. So I think some collectors are hoping that AI is going to help them identify fakes. It's going to help them identify form. It's going to help them, you know, potentially have databases that can authenticate the provenance of a piece. And there are some individuals that are doing work toward that, but I think we will never get to a point where AI is going to tell us what good looks like.
Do you think AI might help us be able to reach new audiences as a marketing tool?
I mean, potentially, yes. AI could be used, and I think we used AI as a term very broadly. Technology could be used to reach new audiences in new ways. We could use digital transformation to engage with different people where they are. We could use augmented reality to create new exhibitions that are virtual as well as in person. So I think it's using technology to engage in new ways, but you can't outsource an understanding of the object to technology.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Adenike.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all.
to all.
Thank you.